I am going to start the meeting. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. As we often do, I am going to introduce our board members, keep it simple, those who are here. So as I go around the room, I see Bill Bagnall, who is our secretary and communications chair. I'm Stan Penkin, president of PDNA. I see Jerry Pike, board member, Glenn Traeger, board member, Mary Sipe, board member, Betty Lou Koffel, board member, Judy Duncan, board member and chair of Livability and Safety Committee, Christian Maynard Phillip, our treasurer, our money lady. Hi, Christian. Patricia Cliff, board member, Christy Barrows, board member, John Warner, board member and chair of Emergency Preparation Committee, Linda Witt, board member. And let me see if I'm missing anyone. If I missed you, I am sorry. Maybe raise your hand if I missed you. Okay, hopefully I got everyone. So let's start off real quickly. Let's just take care of some housekeeping. The minutes of April 8th, assuming everybody has taken a look at them, I'd like to call for a motion to approve.
I move we approve the meeting minutes as written.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, all, we'll do it backwards. All not in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thanks. Minutes are approved. So as we have every month, we have a public safety report, and Lieutenant Jake Jensen kindly attends most of our meetings whenever he can. Sometimes he has to be called to duty, and we appreciate that. So Jake, if you can just fill us in a little bit about what's been happening in the last month and what we should know.
Sure. So let's start with some good news. The good news is the governor announced today that the state of Oregon is going to follow the CDC's newly released guidelines about what fully vaccinated folks can do. So hopefully many of us will be able to, if you so choose, ditch some of the masks and other restrictions we've been living with for the past, well, over a year now. City-specific stuff. Since the last month, we've seen some demonstrations that have been happening mostly in downtown. There was a very significant one on April 16th where there were a lot of fires and property damage. Some of the other ones, especially where we've had a little bit of lead time, we've been able to get out in front of them and address the crime and disorder pretty soon after it happens, which has been an effective tactic for us. And so we're looking to continue that going forward where they have these organized demonstrations. Staffing wise, the police bureau right now is at 806 sworn personnel. That includes 7 folks that we hired today. We expect to trend down under 800 sometime over the next 45 days. We're hiring another 3 folks and we're promoting 5 sergeants in 2 weeks. So that'll hopefully help us with some of our staffing issues. I know many of you probably want to talk about the shooting at 9th and Marshall that we had a little bit ago. And it was an injury shooting. We have a suspect identified. Based on our investigation, we don't believe there's any danger to the public. I can't really say more about that event just because this is an active investigation and we haven't wrapped that up yet. Excuse me, but it is reflective of gun violence across the city. Many of you probably saw the news story. We had just over the last 24 hours, we had 8 shootings, including 2 people that were killed by gun violence and then another person that was seriously injured and may end up losing their life. We'll see how that goes. And so we're working these cases. The top 2 priorities for the city, for the police bureau, are gun violence and maintaining public order. So that's where most of our efforts are going. In terms of the stuff that I talk to folks about, I get a ton of complaints about disorder that I talk to people about. And what I'm talking about here is like open air drug use, disordered camps, things that are either not criminal in nature or that are a kind of lower level of criminality, class C, which is our lowest class of misdemeanors, that sort of thing. But what really affect people's quality of life. And I encourage you to continue to report those. We'll continue to work on them. The drug stuff, though, especially the drug use, that's a class E violation, which means that things like rolling through a stop sign, walking on the wrong side of the road, crossing against the light if you're a pedestrian, are all more serious offenses in the eyes of the law than being on the street corner and smoking meth. And so based on that, our ability to enforce violations versus crime, and the tools that we have and the resources that we have, and the, compared to the significant crime problems that we have, we don't have a ton of ability to enforce the drug use that we see and it gets reported to us. The tent stuff, the disordered camps, please continue to report that stuff to Hucker. A lot of times they'll do garbage pickup. Hopefully with these new CDC guidelines, they'll liberalize their ability to clean camps a little bit more than they have recently. And then with the other stuff that you're seeing, please continue to report that either through non-emergency or through online reporting. I realize that this is a long slog, but I feel like if you look back 6 months where we were to where we are now, we're in a little bit of a better place, and it's going to be a longer road back. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but I think we are on the right track as we continue to move forward here. Stan, you got any questions for me?
Just one, something we discussed before, but somebody pointed it out to me the other day, the car racing that's been going on, and seen some pretty disturbing tire tracks over on 13th Avenue, and I forget which cross street, but I know we've talked about that, and we of course understand the resource issues. Anything you can tell us about that? Because I know it's really disturbing to a lot of people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I know that North Precinct is taking the lead on that. That used to be something that was kind of a joint venture between North Precinct and our traffic division. However, with the traffic division largely going away in February, that's been more of a North Precinct led event. And just like everywhere else in the police bureau, their resources are pretty constrained. But we do recognize that's a significant issue. We've had, I think, 26 traffic deaths in the city so far this year, and at least one, but I think more than one of those have been due to people participating in these street racing activities. And so I know we're working on a plan to address it, but again, with less than 800 cops to provide police services to a city of 650,000, we've got to kind of pick and choose our spots there.
So if somebody calls, would somebody calls 911 on that, there's a good chance there's not going to be a response? Is that
well? So
or
let's ad-lib this. So let me just look at what we're doing right now. Right now in Central Precinct, I can give you an idea. Of course, our call load goes up and down depending on time of day, time of year, and just kind of there's some random fluctuations in there too. But in the Pearl District right now, if you called 911 and said someone's street racing around my neighborhood, I would say that it's fairly likely you get a response. Right now, there's 3 cars, 4 cars available sort of, let's just say north of Burnside, not necessarily in the Pearl District, but north of Burnside. So it kind of in proximity to respond to that kind of thing. On the other hand, if you called and said, hey, someone's street racing around like Milwaukee and Tacoma down there in Selwood, or 17th Tacoma down there in Selwood, there's nobody free on the east side of the precinct whose assigned patrol area is south of Hawthorne. So it's less likely that over there you get a response, or at least a response that would be effective. So please continue to report it. If we have the resources, we are going to respond to that. That's something that's important to us. But sometimes we just don't have the people to do it.
Judy, you have a question?
Hi, officer.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. The fountain came back on in the Jameson Square last week, and so the children are out playing in it. And it's lovely, but there seems to be a new culture that's developed around the park with many people there that hang out, and they start shouting at one another vulgarities and this sort of thing. In fact, the other evening, several of us called 911, and fortunately, several of your police cars came down. There was a fellow that was having an episode. And it's the exposure to the children that's troubling. Do you have any other ideas what we might do to prevent this happening on a regular occurrence?
So Jameson Square, I know, is patrolled by park rangers. Have you talked to them at all about this?
I have not.
So that's one potential resource, is talk to park rangers. And then you can also, and I'll do this for this meeting, but if you have an area that you know is affected by this kind of thing, you can always call the precinct and make an extra patrol request. And what that does is it puts something into our all box where the officers that are working are able to look at the extra patrol requests in their assigned area. And then as they have time, they can go around and just be present in that area on the lookout for whatever it is that's reported. Now, again, we may or may not have free time any given day, but it at least lets us know that there's an issue there that we need to be paying attention to.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Jake, we used to have more presence by park rangers. I haven't seen them as much in the last year or two. But hopefully, I know, I guess in the upcoming budget, there's going to be budgeted for what, 24 additional park rangers across the city, if I have that right. So I'm hoping we will see more of a presence of them even here in the Pearl.
Yeah, and with park rangers, right, if you call them and tell them, hey, there's a problem here in Jameson Square with folks that are, behaving in kind of a disordered way and yelling stuff in front of kids that really isn't pleasant to hear, and you don't see park rangers show up sometime in the next, whatever you think is an appropriate period of time, depending on the kind of behavior, at least the next couple of days, feel free to call and follow up with them and say, hey, I requested folks show up here and I haven't seen any rangers show up. Can you tell me what the outcome of my request was? I don't know if you can hear, my kids and their cousins are playing in the background here at Grandma and Grandpa's house. And I certainly wouldn't want them to be hearing the kind of stuff that I sometimes hear as I walk through Jameson Square.
And the rangers used to fairly often walk with us on our foot patrols, but I think it's been a long time since, right, Sally?
No, they do.
Have they still lately?
Wednesdays.
Okay, good.
Sally, did you have a question?
The number to call Park and Recs is 823-1637. That's
Thank you.
there.
Thank you, Sally. Jake, if no other questions, want to let you go. Thank you again for being here. And as we always say, be safe out there.
So I see Ricky's got a question. Are park rangers available after business hours? Yes. I'm not 100% sure, but I know they're available after business hours, and I think they are pretty close, if they're not all the way to 24/7 operation at this point. Of course, their crew at night is going to be much smaller, but they are available at least days and afternoons when most people are awake. And if that's it, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Jake. Take care. See you next time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on, we do have a pretty packed agenda tonight, so I am happy to welcome our representative for District 33, Maxine Dexter. I know I saw you here somewhere. There you are. And if you recall, Representative Dexter, it must have been 4 or 5 weeks ago when we were going through the riot situation here. She held a town hall that I think many of us attended, so we really appreciate that. So Representative, the floor is yours to tell us what's going on, and then we'll have some Q&A after you tell us what you want to tell us. So you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Stan. And I apologize, I'm on my phone because I just got back from Salem. I was worried that you would get to me before I parked my car. So I'm glad that it worked out. So really glad to be here. And so I'm just going to start out by asking, am I on my side? Are you guys looking at me sideways?
Yes, you are.
Because you all are all on your side. So
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Your right
Excellent.
side up now.
That would be distracting for everyone, I'm sure. So Maxine Dexter, as Stan said, I live in Northwest Portland, just up the hill up Thurman towards Leif Erikson. So close to the Pearl, not in it proper. I am very honored to be serving in this role just almost a year now. And I want to really call out the legacy Representative Mitch Greenlick left, and his passing is just out a year away. We just celebrated with his family his 1-year anniversary by the Jewish calendar last week, and just really huge shoes, and appreciate everyone's understanding as I learn the ropes and try to do my best to serve you all. So I'm going to go over really just quickly. I don't want to take too much time. I really am here to listen. My dog's chewing on my shoe, so I'm going to grab that really quick. Sorry. And
The adventures of Zoom.
yes, exactly. I literally, like, she's so excited to see me that this is like her behavior. So anyway, want to just highlight a couple bills that I think are relevant for the district's interest, an issue with Forest Park, and then give an update on the committees that I'm serving on. Really quick, what I want to do is take questions and listen. 2814 is our indirect sources or clean construction bill, which I'm working with Mary Pivoto on, and Neighbors for Clean Air, which many of you probably know. She's been active in our community for a really long time. It's looking at trying to decrease diesel particulate matter on our communities, and the Pearl and North Portland are hugely impacted by this, as is Northwest or Willamette Heights, which is just up the hill from the industrial district. Working with Representative Bossart Davis, who is a Republican and has been a leader in her party on this, and really trying to come to some good balance for industry and air quality. So more to come on that. It's in Ways and Means, and so we'll see if it gets funded. HB 3035 is a Coffee Creek Correctional Facility pilot program, not really relevant to the district, but I do think that healthcare in our correctional facilities has more to offer. And so working on that as a doctor on the Judiciary Committee. HB 3039, I'm not going to talk about. 3037 is our youth suicide reporting bill. That passed out of the Senate Healthcare Committee. It goes to the floor in the Senate here soon. So that'll be hopefully my first bill that gets passed. It allows, Multnomah County brought this to me, and it allows the counties when a youth in a county other than their home county has a death by suicide. Right now, they cannot report that to the home county, and intervention or postvention is what it's called. After a child or a youth has committed suicide is really important because there's a contagion effect. There's an enormous risk for their peers to actually do what more or less is a copycat suicide. And so it's critical that home counties have that information so that they can give the support to the community that they need. So I'm proud that that'll be my first bill out. And I think the other ones really aren't relevant to the district. So I'll go just letting you know the committees that I'm serving on. Judiciary, really relevant to the Pearl District with all of the police accountability bills and differences that are. Portland Police Bureau is the subject of many of our discussions, as it was today. I think we have got a very good collaborative bipartisan group. Vice Chair Noble is a former police chief and a Republican who's eminently reasonable and very collaborative. And so it's been a joy and an honor to be there. And because I represent the Pearl and urban Portland and have had an interest in these issues, I'm there and I'm there to learn. So that's where I really would love to hear your feedback. Healthcare is where I spend all my time outside of the building. And so I have a lot of background in that. And I think I'm adding to the conversation significantly in that role. I invoked Representative Greenlick's spirit today as I was challenging some of Pharma's positions. And, I just think that transparency and accountability is really important. And that's what we're working towards with universal health, hopefully coming sooner than later for everyone. Finally, I'm the subcommittee chair on COVID-19. And so, yes, I'm very excited about the CDC's lifting those mask recommendations for anyone who's fully vaccinated. I think that's the major thing people want. And if they are vaccinated, getting to do that is something that is more motivating than just about anything else we can do. So I'm excited about that. And we've had a lot of great conversations at that committee. We just allocated or made the recommendations for our American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So each representative was given $2 million to allocate. And so I'm working with Central City Concern. Rachel Solotaroff and I have known each other for a while and working together to put a respite center downtown in the Old Town location or somewhere else in the urban west side to give post-hospitalization care to our houseless neighbors, to get them stabilized and back on their feet and actually into housing rather than discharging to the street, which is sometimes what happens after hospitalization, and people end up right back in the hospital, and it's cruel and not necessary. And Dr. Solotaroff there has been working well. So we created this new program or endeavor to support expansion of a program they have on the east side of Portland. And I allocated about 1/3 of my dollars to that. Lots of other senators and representatives have allocated dollars to it. So that will hopefully happen in Old Town. And then we had a lot of other areas of allocation. So I can talk about that later if anyone asks questions. And then Commissioner Hardesty and I will have a town hall on Monday, May 24th at 6 p.m. And so please sign up for that. And if you don't have my email, it's reprep.maxinedexter@OregonLegislature.gov. We all have the same format. So as long as you know whether we're a representative or senator, it's the first 3 letters of our title and then our full names, and then OregonLegislature.gov. So please send me a note and we'll get you signed up if you're interested in participating in that. And with that, please ask away anything and give me your feedback on anything at all.
Representative, is there a particular topic for that town hall with Commissioner Hardesty? I'm sorry.
It's public safety.
Oh, public safety. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay.
No,
Thank
I
you.
may not have said it. So, and so the 2 things that we're going to talk about, of course, is the different programs around Cahoots, or, you know, the Cahoots-like program, the police issues, the demonstrations downtown. And then she is also the fire marshal, and Fire Lane 1, which is a really important entry into Forest Park for forest fire management, is also top of mind for a lot of constituents, as my district pretty much embraces all of Forest Park. So we will ask about that as well.
So I just want you to know regarding HB 2814 on diesel, PDNA is a supporter of that. We've supported, our name is there as a supporter of Neighbors for Clean Air. And board member Glenn Traeger and I happened to be on the call with Mary this morning. So we are
Wonderful.
totally supportive of that. And,
I'm so excited.
and while I have the opportunity, I just wanted to throw in, I think I mentioned it to you another time, about gas leaf blowers and the movement to ban them. And there is our Quiet Clean PDX group is making some progress, not as much as we like. It's slow moving, but we are going to have a courtesy hearing at the Energy Committee coming up very soon, sponsored by Barbara Smith Warner. So, well, hopefully next year we'll get that through. So I just want you, I'm just putting in a plug for it. So eventually, when it comes to a vote, we have your support.
Yeah, I'm actually a co-sponsor on the bill, so I am in support. And so please ping me next session and we'll try to get it.
Okay, great. Okay, questions for the representative? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, Patricia, I think I saw you raise your hand.
There we go. Thank you very much, Representative, for joining our meeting. How do you perceive the safety issues in our district here? I mean, are they getting worse or getting better? Or what are the actions that we can all take to improve the situation, which seems to be deteriorating?
No, thank you for that, Patricia. And I see Commissioner Meireran on here too, so I'm sure she may have something to say as well. So how I perceive it is it seems, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because my neighborhood is a little bit different, a little less central, but close by. It seems like it's in fits and starts. We have a lot of break-ins in our neighborhood and a lot of houseless folks who are living in Forest Park. And so we are right up against the park. And so my neighborhood in particular seems like that's been pretty steady. I think the garbage issue that you all are dealing with in a lot of ways with your endeavors in the Pearl and the community action that you've taken is, I think it shows when the community is engaged and trying to care for itself that it actually is a disincentive to some of the habits that folks have. I think the data are not good as far as gun violence. We're seeing more and more of it. So it's not necessarily right in our neighborhood, but that is top of mind for me, as are the direct actions and the demonstrations. And that's where I think that a lot of that kind of comes and goes. And that is most on my mind because I think it gives the perception to a lot of people that Portland isn't safe and that we can't be downtown and be congregating in community as we all get to start taking off masks. And so how do we deal with that, and how do we maintain First Amendment rights and all that? We'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point. The perception of safety is really more of a problem, I think, than the reality of safety in at least our neighborhood. And, seeing a lot of garbage, seeing a lot of boarded up businesses, hearing that people don't feel safe, I think perpetuates a narrative that is really powerfully disincentivizing people from wanting to be downtown. And so that's what I'd really like to hear from you all about. The Portland police are working hard on the gun violence issues. And I know that the housing crisis is one that we absolutely have to deal with as a state, city, and county. And so we've all been working on that. But the community narrative is something that we all can own, and how we engage and how do we change that perspective is really about us being active and growing that community effort to control our neighborhoods and get things, get people out together again and fear less and engage more as we're all able to do that safely with vaccination. So I'll stop talking and would love to hear pushback or whatever other thoughts are on that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your response.
Other questions or comments? No. Okay, well, I encourage everybody to go to that town hall. And could you give us that date again? May 24th, I think.
Yep, Monday, May 24th at 6 p.m.
Okay, important discussions, obviously. So, Representative, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate
It's my
it.
pleasure.
We appreciate all you do.
To
So,
continue to watch and listen.
absolutely. Please do. Okay. So now we're going to move on to Commissioner Sharon Meireran. Commissioner, you've been making a lot of rounds lately, and I think you'll see some familiar faces here. And I know you've been working very hard on your framework plan on homelessness. I'm not sure what happened. I know there was a budget hearing yesterday at the county. I was not able to attend, but I think you'll find there are a fair number of people in this room who have either testified in person or sent in testimony. So I will let you take the floor, and then we'll open it up for some questions.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Stan. And it is really great to see so many of you this evening. It's wonderful to see Representative Dexter as well, an added bonus. And I think there are many of you here who have probably heard this by now, at least once. And so, forgive the repetition, but I just really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you today. And where this stems from, about how much time I'm not going to like overdo it. I'll try not to, but it's just good to have an idea of
Well, how much time are you comfortable with that? 10 minutes or so? Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
So the context in which this sort of topic I'm going to talk about arises is the context of our budget process at Multnomah County, and wanted to just briefly describe that a bit to set the stage. And for our budget, starting in the fall, department heads of the county, so our department of, our health department, county human services, all of our different departments, joint office of homeless services, get together their ideal budgets that they want to bring forward to the county chair's office, Chair Kafori. And so they put together what they need to fund the services and programs that they would like to offer. And then sort of later on in the fall, the winter, the chair works with those departments, also reaches out to community members, organizations, and others to come up and develop her proposed budget for the county. And, the budget is really a representation of sort of our values, our priorities. It really operationalizes how we put our thoughts, feelings, priorities, et cetera, into action. And the other commissioners, and there are 4 commissioners, and then the chair, commissioners in different districts. And by the way, I'm Sharon Meireran, I'm your county commissioner. You are in my district, which is District 1, all of the county west of the Willamette River, and then also inner east side, south of I-84 and out to Cesar Chavez. But we don't play a role in that. In fact, we're not allowed to talk about the budget officially until the chair releases her proposed budget. She did that about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now. And once she releases her proposed budget, then the commissioner's work begins. We have budget sessions where we have department heads talk to us about the budget. We have public hearings, and our last one was yesterday evening. And yes, Stan, thank you so much. There were a number of people, including people on this at this meeting here today, who came and testified at our public hearing. And we just reach out and talk to as many people as we can, get information to inform us in making budget decisions. And the proposed budget is generally a very well-informed, educated, comprehensive approach to the budget. And this year, as with most years, there is a lot of alignment amongst the commissioners, including myself, with the overarching approach in the budget. Part of the budget includes how funding for our joint office of homeless services. It also includes how we are going to spend the revenue from the Metro Supportive Housing Services measure, which was passed by voters last May, with the intent to finally get a handle on being able to house people who are chronically homeless. And chronic homelessness, usually refers to people who have very little or no income, are living outside for long periods of time, unsheltered, and who have one or more disabling conditions. Often it is a mental health or substance use, like we call behavioral health condition. And there are a lot of strategies to approach housing and homelessness, to house people in the long term. And you often hear it took decades for this problem to develop, and it's going to take years, to reach solutions. A lot of that is true. One of the strategies that we know works best, is most effective for people who are chronically homeless, is supportive housing. And that is housing that is deeply affordable, and has wraparound intensive supportive services to meet people's needs so they can sustain the housing. And so a lot of the work, the supportive housing services measure, you can tell by its name, is geared toward providing people with supportive housing to permanently end people's homelessness. And a lot of this work is funded in the chair's budget, her proposed budget. The one area where I feel we need to allocate more resources is for people living unsheltered on our streets. And you know, I think a lot of us have talked about this issue before. We know it. We don't have to belabor what the crisis is, but suffice it to say, there is really a crisis in that is a humanitarian crisis, a public health crisis, and a public safety crisis that affects individuals and our community as a whole from people living unsheltered in often horrific conditions, and sometimes dying from those conditions. And so sort of feeling that there had not been as much investment dedicated to an approach to reduce harm for people, address people living outside right now, I sort of came up with a concept, a framework of what I think we could do in real time and reduce unsheltered homelessness for people living outside, or at least reduce the harm. This is a public health concept of harm reduction. Reduce the harm experienced by people living unsheltered outside. And that is as we are working toward these longer term solutions that we know can make a difference. It's not an either or, it's a both and I think we need to do both of these. So the concept is around a coordinated network of outdoor shelter sites to provide safety, community, and basic hygiene services to people currently experiencing unsheltered houselessness. And it's really, it's really trying to think, it's an informed approach. This is not an approach that I sort of, grasped out of thin air or at the 11th hour thought, hey, maybe we should do something about houselessness. This is an approach that has been informed, most importantly, by people experiencing houselessness, by homeless advocates, by my work with Portland Street Medicine, going to sites and actually seeing people and caring for some of what the medical conditions they experience living outside. Also meeting with business owners and neighborhood associations and so many more. And the beauty of the concept, it kind of aligns across a broad spectrum of people living in our community. And so what the approach does, and I'll get into some of the specifics and then just take questions. The approach does two things. It is sort of an immediate, or in my mind, much more urgent response to what we need to do. Because every night people spend outside it's horrific and harm occurs. So it's that immediate harm reduction approach. It also is what I consider a first rung of the ladder to get people to the place where they are able to receive services, build relationships, and transition to housing that meets their needs. So I feel it's a foundation that is necessary to allow sort of the longer term plans to be able to be impactful and effective. So the way I conceive of it, it would be, alternative or outdoor shelters. There would be a range of types, and they could range anywhere from, what we might call safe sleep sites that are, this is the basic lowest touch, but it would be small and discreet. It would be 8 to 10 structures or tents, and it would be located in a small space and have access to some basic requirements. And all of these will have access to basic requirements. I'll talk about those in a second. But this is like the lowest. There wouldn't necessarily be structured services, but there would be check-in. There might be a peer or someone with lived experience, someone who checks in to make sure things are working and not getting out of control on a regular basis. And next level might be safe parking lots where people can park their cars or RVs and live in them and have access to, again, those basic services and requirements they need to be healthy and safer and live with dignity. And then, you get to the higher end of the spectrum, and these are concepts like many of you are aware of Homer Williams' concept, which I love and is a beautiful model. Also, some things like the existing sites that have sort of pods in them that are more structured. There are small tiny home villages, there's a whole range of options. But the key is that people who are homeless don't form just like this one monolithic group. People have different needs, and many people don't want to be in indoor shelter. And the reality, for a variety of reasons that are valid, and the reality is we don't have enough indoor shelter or places for people to live, even if they wanted to have housing immediately or go inside. The basic requirements that whatever level of site people would be at, what these would include bathrooms and hygiene services, safe heating and a power source, garbage and recycling collection, a safe, dry, insulated sleeping structure, and then access to appropriate services. A lot of you may know that what guides sort of what we are providing in our budget and the types of services and supports to get people to longer term permanent housing is set out in what's called the local implementation plan. And it guides LIP. There's going to be a bunch of acronyms, so I apologize. I will try to set them out. But the LIP guides our region's Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure investments. And this was created by a Home for Everyone, this big regional coalition of stakeholders across the board involved in housing and homelessness. There's a coordinating board, and the LIP was created over a couple of months, several months with this group. And things about the LIP are that it acknowledges very expressly the limitations of some of our traditional shelter sites and expresses a desire for alternative shelter to be among the most pressing, quote now, the most pressing needs as identified through data and by stakeholders. It commits to investing 75% of supportive housing services funds to ending chronic homelessness. And ultimately, as we know, the long-term solution is supportive housing for this particular population. But this is called out as something that LIP endorses and supports. And so, there's a lot more sort of to the plan. I can talk about costs, sort of the vision, a key aspect, which is coordination amongst all of these so that it's a sort of a holistic entity, a whole where there's an overarching plan, and this is consistent rather than sort of one-off piecemeal shelters, like where can we put it now, and striving to find that place, putting it there, having to move it 6 months later. This is an intentional plan that will come about, and I think can really make a difference, both immediately and in the longer term as a basis for meeting the longer term supportive housing needs. So with that, I'm just advocating for funding for that in our current Multnomah County budget, because I feel a moral imperative, to be honest, but it is just really important.
Glenn,
So,
you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is just wonderful. I think there's like three legs to the stool that in order for it to work, you have to develop solutions for. We have the interest, we have the money, but I think the third leg is the land. At least based on our experience here in the Pearl, it's not easy, but it's easier to get the interest and the money. But to find the places to actually locate, your shelter, that's going to be the hardest thing, especially since we don't really have anything in our zoning plans or land use plans for this type of land use or kind of housing. So how are you going to overcome this big hurdle of finding the land and getting people approving the area, for the shelter?
So that is the perfect question that I really appreciate your asking. It has been a tremendous hurdle, and there's a couple of answers to that question that I think can make this less of a barrier. The first, you speak to zoning, and that the city has actually eased a lot of the zoning processes under their shelter to housing continuum plan that was just passed very recently. That changes a lot of those zoning restrictions. It's been quite a while in the making, but they will allow up to 20 units of outdoor shelter on most properties of any kind without requiring sort of a conditional use term of art, but the zoning process and all the hoops you have to jump through in the same way. And so a lot of those restrictions and barriers have been removed. In addition, I think that there's a lot of land owned by the city and county that is especially facilitated now that the shelter to housing continuum plan's been implemented, but that there are a lot of areas owned by the city, the county, and ODOT, which is a little more challenging to engage. If our state representative could do something about that, that would be great. But the way that I look at this is a lot of the reasons that there's been objection to establishing sites in particular areas or land is concerns around liability, concerns around risk. And my perspective is that first of all, we identify the potential, like we identify potential land, and we get this all together. We have staffing capacity that's actually dedicated to that does the work, that does the research, that goes out and sees it. And actually, I think a lot of you probably know Tiffany Hammer. I think that she's like done her own version of it. Like there's ways to identify the land, and then you go through, and for me, it would be with the goal would be to say, okay, how can we make this happen rather than what are all the ways it can't happen? I think that there is a lot of potential, and we need to be kind of looking at this in a different way. And even if it's a small area that's under a bridge or a small glen or whatever that is, that we actually can make it happen and that there's land. We also can do an effort to really support and engage with and incentivize other landowners, whether it's faith organizations or private landowners, to say, how can we make this work, that land that you have could be used for this community benefit? And I think there's a lot of things that we can do in that regard too. But part of it is that concept of A, yes, we can, and B, we're in it together, and this is going to be a real thing. This is not going to be like I said, those one-offs or piecemeal where we're asking one person to volunteer to use your facility. This is like actually a plan. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but I really am looking to do this on public land. So
What's worked for
So,
us here in
Commissioner-
Pearl is a good neighbor agreement where both sides kind of work out their fears and they come up with an agreement and how they would, address any issues that arise with this new, with the housing. So if you can get a good neighbor agreement, that helps settle the issue, a lot of the issues or fears that people have.
it's a great.
So Glenn really put the nail on the head with the question about land, and having experienced it personally, it is a huge challenge. And one of my frustrations is the lack, and I won't talk about the county because I haven't been involved in trying to secure any county land, but city bureaus have not been helpful. And working with Homer, we've had a couple of sites. We've gone to, I won't mention which bureaus, and all we've gotten is pushback and lack of cooperation. And I think most people in this room are familiar with Homer's modular village, which is a beautiful plan and aesthetically pleasing, sanitation, recreation, everything you could possibly imagine. And it's modular, you can move it around. You can adapt it to different sites. And we are trying to get a prototype, so built so everybody can see what this looks like, which would also help make it acceptable to neighborhoods. Because let's face it, a lot of neighborhoods push back on having these types of facilities in their neighborhoods, but they need to see this. And it's not a bunch of flapping tents in the wind that are leaking water. And it's such a struggle to get this first one, which, by the way, will be privately funded. We're not even talking about city money or county money. So that is a huge challenge. And with the shelter to housing continuum that you mentioned, it's supposed to make it easier. And it's also supposed to have every bureau in the city coming up with inventory. Well, good luck with that. We're not having any luck. So I'm venting, but I think people need to hear that. And it is so unbelievably frustrating, I cannot tell you. So sorry to vent, everyone.
Mary's had her hand up for a bit. Let her ask her question.
Hi there.
Hello.
I'm asking this as a neighborhood resident. So what have you found, or what has been the success rate for this type of a program? Has it shown to be helpful in reducing long-term houselessness? I just know in my neighborhood, I frequently see the same folks sort of taking over a little corner, a little space that and living there long-term. Obviously, they don't have many options, but I was just wondering, is there any statistics about how this kind of program can be successful long-term in helping alleviate the bigger issues and problems of having all of these tent societies growing up on our blocks? Thank you.
Yeah, and the goal for this kind of program would be for it to be transitional, temporary. Temporary it could be longer temporary or shorter temporary, and the idea would be to have a base for people to a platform for people to jump off to get into the longer term housing. We have never had and we have unprecedented resources right now for supportive housing because of the supportive housing services measure. I mean, this year we have $52 million in new revenue. Our base revenue for the Joint Office of Homeless Services is about $70,000. Next year, we expect the SHS measure money to double. So we're going to over double the capacity of our Joint Office of Homeless Services, and we better be able to provide the sort of supportive housing and transitional services that can get people into the housing in a way like we never have before. And so a lot of the challenge has been there hasn't been the permanent housing for people to go into and transition out of. This, that I'm going to say time will tell. I'm hopeful that will be very much insisting on accountability and transparency as we're working toward those longer term housing goals. So for example, in the chair's current proposed budget, she's proposing it'll be 800 new supportive housing units for people experiencing chronic homelessness. There's thousands of people living on our streets. And so even if we're able to extend the amount of housing we have, how fast we're getting people into it, there's a need in real time. And what I feel is important is sort of an ongoing reassessment of what we're doing and what we're at, so that we're, if we're not where we want to be, what do we need to shift to get there, with the goal of this absolutely being a temporary situation.
Just to add something, it's one thing I frequently hear from people is, well, it's great to, be great to provide housing, but these people, I'm saying that in quotes, everyone, they don't want to be in houses. They want to live on the street. They have mental illness issues where, they don't want to be moved into those types of supportive environments. So I don't know if that's a frequent response you hear, but it's something I hear a lot.
I actually think that's really important to call out and acknowledge, because there are a lot of people with serious mental health issues and challenges living outside, which is horrific. And that's a much bigger issue that we could talk about at a later date, going to competency, capacity, the ability to make decisions for oneself, and personal freedom. That's a state issue. Again, I'm looking at Representative Dexter, and she and I have these conversations. And yeah, we have wonderful representation working on these issues. But if we are, in terms of people that are living outside and may not want to move into housing, that you frequently see that, because the idea of someone who's been living outside, maybe paranoid, maybe delusional for many, many years, and suddenly plopping them into actual housing, that actually doesn't fit within sort of a lot of times in the mental health, the right context. And so where these kinds of villages or sites or models can help is that, again, it's transitional. It's getting someone into a safe sleep site where they're still living outside, maybe even in a tent, but it's in a place where they can access hygiene services. They get someone's coming by to establish a relationship where over time, maybe they actually can get to a point where they can take that next step, because the services can get to them in an effective way. And so we know what's happening now doesn't work, but I think this actually can help with the issue that you just pointed out.
Commissioner, this is a conversation that we need much more time for, and I'm sorry we don't have enough time here. We could go on for a long time, so I'm going to have to cut it off, unfortunately. But thank you for what you're doing. I think you have a lot of support in this room. I know you have a lot of support, not only in this room, but across the city. And I know some of your, at least I know some commissioners on the city side anyway, who are very supportive. And I think also on the county side. So I hope we can get this all together, break down the silos, and really get something done. And but we need to put political will as well. And you're bringing it, so we really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for those who wanted to ask questions, but we just don't have the time.
And I am here. I will answer your questions. If you just feel free to write to me anytime or call my office, and I will get back to you.
Thank you so
Stan
much.
knows how to reach me.
We'll get that information out. Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, so moving on, I'm going to move on very quickly in my report. I just wanted to mention that Public Safety Action Coalition meeting on Tuesday, we had the district attorney and the local FBI agent to talk about, obviously, public safety, what's happening in the district attorney's office. I know we're all concerned about the riots and prosecutions or lack thereof. I'm happy to report, according to the district attorney, that much more is being done on the prosecution side. He had also mentioned that trials are opening up now after COVID, so there was kind of a backlog there as well. And also there's been cooperation with the FBI. And there was a recent arrest of an arsonist that I believe the perpetrator was picked up in Indiana, and it was a cooperation between District Attorney's Office, Police Bureau, and the FBI. So things sound a little bit more positive there. I just wanted to pass that information on. Judy's going to talk a little bit later about the graffiti collaboration of 5 neighborhoods, but also at PSAC, Safety Action Coalition, we're talking about more collaborations, having other events where neighborhoods come together, but not just the downtown, but try and set this for this to be a model and spread this across the city for more neighborhood cooperation. We know that the city can't do everything and neighborhoods do a lot. And I think we're doing a lot more these days and maybe doing more than our share, but we all need to work together to bring back our city. So those are conversations that serious conversations that we're having to grow that model and that collaboration. I just wanted to mention, I have on here we're talking a lot about public safety tonight. The Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. That's a group that was formed as part of the settlement with the Department of Justice. They have developed a draft about policing. And I think, Bill, we posted it and put it out in the newsletter, but they have a survey out and they're looking for people to chime in about 5 particular topics on this draft. Relates to mental health, addiction and houselessness, gun violence, disproportionate policing of Black and Brown Portlanders, structural changes, and the health of police officers. So the deadline for the survey is May 16th. So I would encourage you all, I'll put the link in the chat, and I encourage you all to take a look at it and chime in on the survey. It's pretty important stuff. We are not going to have any gift card winners tonight. We're pushing it to June and July. John Hollister is traveling, so we'll get back to that in June. And that's what I have. I'm going to move on to financial report. Christian, please.
Hey, thank you. So just 2 quick notes. Our bank balance in the month of April went almost unchanged. No major changes there. Committee chairs, though, this is my big thing. As most of you know, I'm working on our next budget to propose at our next board meeting. So please get back to me. The deadline that I gave all committee chairs was this Saturday, end of day. So reach out to me. I'm a resource. I think I armed everyone with enough information, but I really need your responses about your respective budgets so we can bring everything together. So thanks all. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Short and sweet. Judy, livability and safety. Unmute.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, 2 items to report on this evening. The graffiti event was a group of 5 downtown neighborhood associations that came together with the city, the Office of Civic Engagement, providing the graffiti kits. And there were 2 groups of us. There was one group that met at the Director's Park on April the 24th. There were 100 volunteers at that site. And then in the Pearl at Jameson Park, we had 55 volunteers that showed up in the pouring rain. And it was a good effort. It was very, very successful. The thing that is going to bring this city back will be the spirit and the heart of the people that are understanding that they want to become involved in helping our city become clean again. And we did a follow-up meeting with the livability chairs that were a part of the graffiti event. And we've decided that we will select neighborhoods that we will go to. We think that Hawthorne District will be our next neighborhood to help with their graffiti. I don't have any dates for that yet, but I will keep people informed. We've had many more people. Graffiti was very unpopular for many years. We would try to recruit people to do graffiti remediation in the Pearl District, along with Mike Street, who's out every day. But lately it's become a very popular thing to do. So we have graffiti kits available. I have them stored here in my bathroom, that if people want to get a graffiti kit, just let me know and I have those available for you. So that was a good, our first community event of the year, and it was very, very successful. So the next really good news that I'm very, very happy to report on is the Art in the Pearl Festival. We just found out today that the board has decided to have the festival. It will be Labor Day weekend, and very excited. We've had their board members have been coming over and working with our clean team zone 6 so that they can help prepare the park and keep it nice for the event that is coming up. And so we have 8 new clean team members because of that. But what I learned today that just really warmed my heart is that the thing that sealed the deal for the board to make the decision to go forward with this art festival in September is that they said the collaboration between the Pearl District Business Association and the Neighborhood Association is what really sealed it for them. They said also because they're coming to help clean up in the park with the clean team, they can visually see, leading back to Representative Dexter's point, about the perception that we need to change. So if we can get people to come see what is actually there instead of reading about it in the news, we can prove our point about how well we are doing here with our cleanup process. So we will be gathering volunteers to help out. I've assured Annie Meyer, who's been my contact person, that we will be there in full force to be volunteers at their art festival in September. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Great work, just great work. Let's keep it going. So emergency preparation, John, anything to report?
Yes, yes, Stan, thank you. And good evening, everybody. Great to be with you. Thank you, representatives and commissioner, I guess, for joining us this evening. So again, I'm John Warner. I chair the Emergency Preparedness Committee. Just a quick update tonight. We continue to hold our weekly COVID Zoom forum. We've been meeting for since I think it was the 6th of April, 2020 to keep our finger collectively on the pulse of what's happening in the pandemic and what we can do as individuals and our community to keep us safe and help us reopen responsibly. That's continues to be well attended. We're wrapping up now our disaster water storage campaign. We've had 15 of our communities participate, purchasing a little bit less than 1,500 of these 3-gallon aqua bricks for emergency water storage. So we've got close to 4,500 gallons of disaster water storage capability achieved through this campaign, and will be the aqua bricks will be delivered in the middle of this month. So we're excited about that. And then I guess lastly, at this month's EPREP committee meeting, we continued the conversation from last month where we've been holding a roundtable discussion about all hazards, great and small, and looking at in addition to hazards, looking at the social determinants of disaster. Because a hazard by itself isn't necessarily a problem. It's really the confluence of hazards and people, and therefore the social determinants of disaster that really are our point of focus. And then we're also, thinking about the social determinants of disaster resilience as well. So we've got a great, robust, ongoing dialogue about that, and continuing our more than 6-year now neighborhood emergency preparedness and disaster resilience initiative. So really want to thank all of the volunteers that are making this happen. That's it, Stan.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate the work your committee is doing. David Dysart, co-chair of planning, is also traveling, but Reza, I think you're here. Do you have anything to report on planning and transportation?
Yes, it's pretty light for us. We were going to have the Wellbe project or Lovejoy Square come back to us on this coming Tuesday, but they asked to postpone until June. So it's really light on the land use side. We have the Flanders Bridge project, which is scheduled to open, I think, by the first week of June, hopefully, if there aren't any more setbacks. So that's really exciting. And then a lot of our energy these days is focused on 13th Avenue and how we can continue to support the businesses. We're looking at making changes on the street to make it look a little nicer, replacing some of the construction barriers with like flower pots, and seeing how else we can support the businesses. There are some opportunities for additional activation on that street. There's some gaps on blocks that are currently closed to traffic that we're thinking about how we can activate and make that more of a public amenity. Because what we really want to do is make the street feel like a public space and not just like you have to feel like a customer patronizing one of the businesses to feel welcome there. So we're continuing to work with the city and our partners at PDNA to make that happen. It's been a slow and steady process, but we're making some good headway there.
Okay, that's it, Reza?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'm going, since both John and David are not here, I'm going to report on the ad hoc security committee. So as you may recall, I think it was 2 months ago, we set up an ad hoc committee to take a closer look at security issues here in the Pearl. The fact that there are numerous security companies. It's not a consolidated effort. We're not an enhanced service district here, so we don't have security throughout the Pearl. It's just very broken up. So we made a decision to do some investigation, see if there's anything we do to improve that situation. So I think you all know that a survey was put out a week or two ago, and I'm going to report very briefly. In that survey, there were 343 respondents representing 89 different buildings. There are 15 different security companies throughout the Pearl. 91% of the respondents have these safety concerns: building break-ins and theft, car break-ins, broken windows, tents, people sleeping on the sidewalks. 87% of respondents would be willing to consider multi-building neighborhood security program. Now, mind you, this is both residential and business. This is not just residential responses on this survey. So with that information, the committee is trying to move to the next step, and there is a private citizen here in the Pearl who has donated $3,000 to do an assessment, hiring a security company to take all this information, go through the neighborhood, and give us an assessment. 2 stages to that. The first stage would be just to see what the current state of the Pearl District is in terms of Police Bureau crime statistics, identify Pearl District hotspots, where are drugs being sold, criminal elements and tents, and exploring perimeter activity, Broadway, from Hoyt to Burnside, and under the 405. And I know Sally Mize is with us tonight. She she has a good handle on what a lot of these hotspots are, but we want to look to see, get a formal professional assessment of what things are really like in the Pearl. With that, we will then look for some recommendations about what actions might we take, and with a community engagement approach to it, and an outreach to vulnerable populations. And that would be something similar to what the Downtown Neighborhood Association is doing now with their program in reaching out to the vulnerable population. So that's something we want to look at too in terms of what recommendations we come up with. And the other piece of the recommendation would be a proposal on how could we consolidate security services here in the Pearl that would be less costly for everyone and be more effective, and be with a company that can really, or companies, it may not be one company. So that's what we're looking for. So I think it's going to be perhaps next month, we may have a more definitive report, and then we'll see where we go from there. Any questions on that from Judy?
Actually, I didn't have a question. I was going to ask if after we complete this report, I could give Laura's report from the PDBA for her.
Oh, sure. Okay. You can do it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she was unable to be here, and she's the director of the PDBA. And a couple of things that have not been mentioned already in the meeting that the Business Association is accomplishing is that they have been seeking some substantial sponsors to help them out with their funds, and they're being successful in finding several of those. So that's real progress. They're also looking at restructuring the membership dues for the time so that businesses can be a part of the association that are struggling to come back to the scene. I can't tell you how wonderful this marriage is going between the neighborhood association and the business association, because they're pushing information from the business association to us, and we're pushing information to them from the neighborhood association. And the business association just was not aware of all of the work that we're doing, and more of them want to be a part of the work that the neighborhood association is doing. So it's working really well.
Yeah, Judy, I agree that this has been years in the making. We've been working on this for a few years, and I'm really thrilled to see this coming to fruition, because we all have common interests. We're all in this together. So that's really great collaboration. So thanks. Report on Neighbors West Northwest Coalition. I think many of you know, meeting last night, we were joined by Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, and a couple of things, just some highlights. She was very supportive of the neighborhood associations and what the associations do, and that was really, really good to hear. She mentioned that today at the budget session at City Council, she was going to ask for an amendment to the budget that would include $250,000 for small grants. This is something that was taken out of the budget last year, and the budget proposal for this coming year, it was removed as well. So she's trying to put money back in. And these are for grants that are given out to neighborhoods to do good things, to do things that engage the community, and do things that do cleanups and all sorts of things like that. So I don't know whether it's going to make it into the budget or not. Fingers crossed that it does. I guess the major thing that came out of last night was Commissioner Hardesty told us that we could expect some kind of big news today about civic life. And I think some of us suspected what it might be. And early this morning, it turned out to be that Director Sukri is transitioning out, as the term was given to staff this morning. And her last day apparently is going to be tomorrow at Civic Life. So I know that there are some people across the neighborhood system who are actually pleased with that, but I won't say much more. And that's about it. I think, Stacy, I think you're here. I think there's a board orientation coming up for new board members. Are you there still, Stacy?
For coalition.
Now, is that just for the coalition, not for the neighborhoods? I wasn't clear.
Yeah, just for the coalition.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. So that is all I have. Next week, our guest will be the folks from Bybee Lakes Hope Center, formerly known as the Wapato Jail. That's turned into a wonderful facility. And we'll hear more about it next month when they come to our meeting. And I will open it up for any other business, comments, questions from anyone out there. No, I don't see any. Whoops, now I see three. Okay, okay, Sally, then Patricia, then Mary.
Is Sharon Meireran still here?
I don't think she is, Sally.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, you can contact her directly.
I will.
Okay. Patricia.
And if you could just send us the contact information for the woman who just spoke from the Multnomah County, that would be great on homelessness and everything.
Yeah, okay. Well, Bill will put that out.
Push that out so that that's
Sure.
easy to, and also for our representative who was very articulate and whom I'd like to continue to engage with. So that would be really helpful. Thanks so
And
much.
they're still listening. So
Oh, good. Thank you.
thanks for hanging in there, Representative. Appreciate it. Mary, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, Stan, I was just wondering when you mentioned Bybee Lakes, I think it would really be nice if we were to reach out to the Navigation Center. I've tried on an individual basis. We've heard nothing about their success or what's happened since, in the year, now it's almost 2 years that they've been open. And I think it would really be nice, especially since the neighborhood association and the neighbors, really supported that. And it's just sort of like, maybe we could hear from them and find out what they're doing and, how's the program going?
Okay, well, we can give that a shot. We can go over, I can invite TPI to come over, George or Stacy or both of them.
Stan, I have a good contact there too that I used to get reporting from, so I can kind of sync with you offline.
Yeah, that's fine. We have the contacts there.
Great.
But, yeah, good thought. We can do that. Okay. Any other comments?
Ricky has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, regarding the security, ad hoc security committee.
Yes.
If we have specific information that we've observed in terms of, drug deals or other activity like that, do you want them? And if so, who do we send it to?
That's really for the police bureau or your whatever. I don't know where you are in the Pearl or to your particular security company, but that's not something that for us to take on. Perhaps once we get to a point where we have a more consolidated security system in the Pearl, we might have a better reporting type procedure and better response. But right now, it's not something that we are capable of doing. Nope.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we're at 7:25. I didn't think we'd make it. I thought we'd go way over, and we're still here. So, okay, everyone. I think we're going to adjourn the meeting and look forward to seeing you all next month. Representative, thank you again for being here, and we'll be seeing more of you. We'll be seeing more of each other, all of us, I think. So thank you. Good night, everyone.
Stan.
Take care.